Yasas. I actually wrote an essay on this, and when I read it out loud, it was just way too long, so I decided to talk about it from my mind. Um, as most of you know by now, I am totally blind, and naturally that means that I have never been in a war. I obviously didn't join the army. I don't know anyone who has served. I've met a few people from World War II, but that was about it. That said, I do think that there are two main ideas that seem to be pushed about war. One of them is that it's absolutely wrong, no matter what anyone says, and for any reason, and the other is exactly the opposite, that war should always be fought every time the leaders of a nation want it, for any reason at all. And both of these, I think, are totally wrong. I do think that there needs to be a balance. Um, to me, there are several instances in which war truly is necessary. And the most pressing one is to prevent invasion. Now, invasions really don't happen that much today, as much as they used to in the past, uh, in many parts of the world, and in others it's totally different. They're constantly invading each other and fighting over borders and whatnot. But in that situation, I definitely think that it's necessary if someone is trying to take over your nation or even just to occupy it. No one wants to be ruled by a foreign power, or whether it be temporarily or not, and certainly no one wants to be invaded. So I do think that it's necessary to fight off that kind of attack. I do not believe in invading nations, though. Um, if you are going to help an ally, that's a different story, but it's quite different to go in and sort of invade for your own purposes, and a lot of that is happening now, which I'll get into in a moment. Um, the next reason that I believe it's necessary to fight is in gaining independence. Um, most places that are ruled by countries, and the glaring exception that comes to mind here is Canada, don't want to be in this situation. And even Canada, I mean, they have their own parliament, they have their own laws. They are technically under England, but I'm pretty sure that if the Queen or Parliament decided to dissolve all Canadian governmental bodies and take over the country as if it were part of England, most Canadians would be pretty angry. So, as you can imagine, this is obviously even more so for countries which did not agree to be ruled by another country. Most of them either want self-government, or they want to be in that country's parliament, or they flat out want independence. And of course, this is what happened in the War of Independence in 1821 against the Ottomans, the Turks now. And yes, there were people, believe it or not, even during that war, who did not want independence. The businessmen, people who were rich or prestigious, many of them were fine with the way things were, but obviously it was necessary for Irlanda that independence was gained, and so the first revolution of modern times was fought. Of course, the second being not a war, but the revolution of the 21st of April, 1967, which is a very different situation. The third time when war is necessary is to protect and defend allies. Now, as a patriot, I put my country first and foremost. But I do think that it is a good thing to make allies, particularly if countries really help you, whether it be through providing jobs to your citizens, or education, or resources, or trade, things like that. I don't think that we should get involved in anyone's civil war. That is really their business. But if they reach out to us and there really is, especially if we made a deal to help them, I think that that's a different story. Certainly, during the War of Independence, we had help. If it wasn't for foreign aid, I'm not even sure if we would have won it completely on our own. But even there are times when our allies want us to get involved in things which have nothing to do with us, and that's pretty much what I was saying earlier. To help them fight for independence, or fight off invasion, or something of that nature, that's one thing. But if they get involved in a war that literally has nothing to do with them, it's someone else's war, or they want to gain something from that country, be it oil or money or just to control that country, whatever, I don't think that we should be getting involved in those kinds of wars. They have nothing to do with us. America does this a lot. They drag us and everyone else in. So does the UN, the EU, NATO, etc. There's a difference between a real war that is necessary and one that is not. And that is where I draw the line. The final instance of war is really the saddest, in my opinion, and it's the one that really should be avoided at all costs. Well, all war should be avoided at all costs, but Civil War. We had one, as a matter of fact, right after World War II. So we went from one war to another. I always like to use diplomacy first, because I think that it's the most reasonable thing to do. And certainly if a country, especially Greece, is in that much turmoil and trouble, rather than to see a war, as most of you know by now, I do prefer military rule. That said, to have a military dictatorship strictly for the purpose of avoiding war is not advisable, because either A, war would break out as soon as democracy was restored, or B, the dictatorship would just never end, and that's not right. It should be temporary, and there should be ways of creating unity and also helping the nation to heal. That's why, for example, the revolution of the 21st of April was called the nation-saving revolution. If you're just going to rule for the sake of being in power, that's not good for anyone. And sometimes civil war is just unavoidable, and there's just, particularly if there are skirmishes going on between civilians and people are losing their lives and the economy is stopping, and if those types of things are allowed to continue strictly in the name of not having an official war, the country could fall anyway. So it's best to do that, and I do think that if a part seriously wants to secede, and there is absolutely no way of uniting them and meeting them through negotiations, I think that it is better to let them secede, excuse me, than to have a civil war, because we all want to avoid bloodbaths. It's just something that no one wants. That's pretty much it. And one of the other things that I wanted to mention is that it's a little bit unrelated, but people who are against war tend to think that those who are for it, whether it be in certain instances or just in general, love it. That, oh, we can't wait to go to war, let's kill people. And that's not true. Most people who truly feel that way are mentally unstable. They're insane, they've been traumatized, or they're just born killers. Most people, and that includes very honorable generals and whatnot, don't like war. They might get an adrenaline rush from certain things, but if you ask them honestly and truly, do you like war? Most will tell you no, because it's not pretty. It is ugly. But one of the main problems that I find, and this does relate, and I think that this is very, very dangerous, to ask a traditional soldier whether they like war is a little bit different than asking someone who just sits there and pushes buttons all day long. War is becoming a very mechanized, very impersonal thing, and I think that that is one of the most dangerous things on Earth, because you don't see the people that you're killing. You don't see the damage that you're doing. You just learn, okay, this button does this, that button releases a bomb, that button releases a missile, that one shoots people, and it's like you're playing a video game. Obviously there are people who keep in mind that what they're doing is serious, but I do think that there is a much greater potential to sort of see it as, sitting on the internet and playing a game. And I really dread the idea of the world going down that path. If there must be war, I do think that it should involve traditional face-to-face, and in particular hand-to-hand combat, because if there was more of that, then people wouldn't want to have war. They would realize just how terrible it is, and they would try their best to avoid it. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Comments, as usual, are welcome. Please keep them civil. Thank you.